The following was written by Robert Wright and published in Dodge City, the Cowboy Capital, in 1913. Among the many things that young Dodge City took great pride in and excelled in was one pertaining to her great game resources and the chase, and that was her dogs. They were known far and wide. Everyone was singing the praises of Dodge City's dogs, and justly too, for they were the best bred of the kind in the world. I mean the purebred greyhound, and there were several large packs of these hounds. I expect the greatest pack and the largest one was owned by Mayor James H. Kelly, and for that reason, the gang christened him Dog Kelly. The first winter of Dodge's existence, there came a deep snow, the latter part of November, which drove the antelope off the hills into the river bottom, where they bunched up by the thousands. Kelly started out the morning after the storm, and with a lot of sports and a big pack of greyhounds, and just a half-mile west of Dodge, they struck a big band of antelope, and the dogs soon caught all they could carry home. The snow was deep, and the morning turned out to be very warm. They were all true sports, and did not wish to kill for useless slaughter, and the dogs were warm and tired, so they called them off and started back to town. When they got in, Kelly missed a favorite hound by the name of Jim, only a pup, 6 months old, but a monster. He was extraordinarily large for his age, big-boned and well-muscled, and gave promise of making a fine animal when he got of age. So back went Kelly after Jim Dog. A mile or two from where they quit the hunt, he found a dead antelope. A few miles farther along the Santa Fe Trail, he found another, and on he went, finding dead antelope until he got to the foot of 9 Mile Ridge, 20 miles west of Dodge City. There he found Jim Dog, lying by the side of his last kill. I know Kelly told me there were at least a dozen antelope killed by the same dog in the 20-mile run. You see, the old Santa Fe Trail ran along the river, and the wind had swept the snow to a great measure out of the trail, and the herd of antelope they started that morning kept the trail because it was easier traveling for them. The dog kept after them, and when he would kill one, would leave it and go after the others, until he was completely used up and worn out. Kelly brought him home in front of his saddle, and no money could buy Jim after this exploit. Many times afterwards, when the dog got age and they would be on a hunt 20 or 30 miles away, the other dogs would all quit and the hunters return home. When Jim Dog would be missing, sometimes it would be 2 or 3 days before his return, and he would eventually stagger in, all tired out, as lank as a shad, and it would be days before he would notice anything but water and food. He would be so completely done up and worn out. We would kid Kelly by saying, "Jim has quit." "Not until the antelope does," would be his reply. Robert Wright. During the wild days of Dodge City, the most famous dog owner was James Kelly, known by everyone as Dog Kelly. Before coming to Dodge City, Kelly had been a scout at Fort Hays and had worked under Lieutenant Colonel George Custer. Kelly took care of Custer's horses and his pet greyhounds. When Kelly left the military, Custer gave him a parting gift of a dozen greyhounds. When Kelly arrived at Fort Dodge in 1872 and then decided to become part of the newly formed Dodge City, he had his pet greyhounds with him. Besides Dog Kelly, quite a few of Dodge City's prominent citizens owned dogs. Alonzo B. Webster had an Irish setter named Pearl. Webster even traveled to Hillsdale, Michigan, in order to breed Pearl with a dog named Champion Rufus. Pearl would give birth to 9 puppies. George Hoover had a dog named Troubles. Unfortunately, the dog crossed the railroad track when a train was coming and was killed in 1878. Pat Shagrew had a pointer named Maud. Maud would give birth to the finest litter of pointer pups in the country in June of 1878. Henry Beverly was given an imported shepherd dog as a present in 1880. Dogs in Dodge City sometimes made the news. Fred Singer's dog went missing on Christmas Day in 1878. Fred Singer and his friends searched high and low for the lost dog, but without success. After 5 weeks passed, his dog was finally discovered at the bottom of an old dry well on the southern slope of Boot Hill. The dog was found alive, but suffering greatly from starvation and dehydration, being described as skeletal. When Lieutenant Gardner's favorite hound, named Omar, died in 1877 from congestion of the lungs, the newspaper published an entire article that served as a sort of obituary. In 1884, a lawsuit came before Judge Cook in Dodge City over a black and tan dog. 2 people had passed the dog between them so often that it was a matter of debate over who really owned the dog. The value of the dog was given as being 50 cents, but the cost of the lawsuit was around $48. And there were smaller newspaper items about dogs in Dodge City over the years. The finding of a red pointer dog that was lost by some hunters in 1885, news that Walter Hart got a new dog, and news that Fred Leonard had found his lost dog. Dogs were also associated with Dodge City businesses. In 1884, J.T. Copeland advertised that he was a breeder of both fine poultry and English Bull Terrier dogs. In 1879, York and Draper put out an ad that they wanted 50 dogs, Colorado Shepherd dogs preferred. It is evident that a large number of people in Dodge City own dogs. However, there were a great many wild dogs roaming the area. These wild dogs were considered a threat to both people and their pets, as they may have carried rabies. Fear of mad dogs spread throughout Dodge City. In 1881, a young lady in Dodge learned that her younger sister, living in another part of Kansas, was bitten by a rabid dog. 2 neighbor children had also been bitten. There were other stories circulating in 1881 about mad dogs infecting people with deadly rabies. In order to combat fears, Dodge City instituted a dog tax. People with dogs paid the tax to prove ownership. Dogs without owners were rounded up and impounded. If nobody claimed the dog, then it would be killed. The responsibility of dealing with the wild dogs fell to the city marshal and the officers under him. The fear of rabies among dogs was not unfounded. In Dodge City in 1884, a rabid dog had attacked and bitten several other dogs before it was killed. The other dogs were also put down. And so there was a great divide among the dogs of Dodge City. The dogs that were owned were respected and much loved in the community, while the wild dogs were a source of fear and loathing. It must be remembered that the first vaccine against rabies was not developed until 1885, and effective treatment of rabies was not widespread until around 1890.